Hello and welcome to the Irish Aesthete. Previously I was speaking about three wealthy sisters who came to be known as the Golden Guinness Girls, and in particular I was talking about the youngest of them, Oonagh. She can be seen here in a portrait painted in 1931 by the Anglo-Hungarian artist Philip de Laszlo. The picture was commissioned by Oonagh's then husband, Philip Kindersley, who she'd married 2 years earlier at the age of 19, and with whom she had two children, a son, Gay, and a daughter, Tessa. Initially, all seemed well with the marriage, and the couple became members of the Smart Set in London, their social lives much reported in the press, and their every movement recorded by photographers. But gradually differences in temperament began to emerge between them. One of the problems was that while Oonagh loved to be in Ireland, Philip didn't really care for the country. Oonagh adored being here, and in particular she wanted to stay on an estate in County Wicklow called Luggala, which her father Ernest had been renting from the Wingfield family since the early years of the last century. She also liked to visit other parts of Ireland, especially the west, where her family then owned Ashford Castle. One of the Guinnesses' friends and neighbours there owned a large house called Castle M'Garrett. He was Dominic Browne, 4th Lord Oranmore and Browne, seen here as a young man. The Brownes were one of the tribes of Galway, one of the dominant families who came to control much of the west of Ireland and own a great deal of its land. Dominic's great-grandfather, also called Dominic, had been desperate to be given a title, as he eventually was in 1836, becoming the first Lord Oranmore and Browne. But the amount of money he spent campaigning for a peerage proved to be his ruination, and in the aftermath of the Great Famine, the Brownes, like a lot of other families, were forced to sell large areas of their estates. Among the properties then sold was Ashford Castle. Ironically, the purchaser was Oonagh Guinness's great-grandfather. There had been a fine classical house at Castle M'Garrett, but it was largely destroyed in an accidental fire in 1811, after which the Brownes moved temporarily, as they thought, into the old stable block. Here is what it looked like in 1837, just after the family had been given that much sought-after peerage. Although various plans were drawn up for a new house, it never got built, and instead the former stables were gradually enlarged and improved to produce a comfortable, if not especially distinguished, residence. It can be seen here. However, at the start of the last century, the third Lord Oranmore and Browne, Dominic's father, decided something really had to be done, and he invited architect Richard Caulfield Orpen to remodel the building. The result, frankly, is not a thing of beauty, at least as regards the cement-rendered exterior, which lacks any aspirations to grace. And tacking on a few crenellated towers here and there, as though to justify the word castle in the house's name, merely looks superfluous. However, the interiors were better, not least because the ceilings had plasterwork copied from designs made by James Wyatt for Leinster House in Dublin. As I've already mentioned, the Kindersleys and the Brownes became close, or at least Oonagh and Dominic became close, as this page from her photograph album in August 1934 indicates. They were then visiting Tramore in County Waterford, and another member of the same party was Valerie French, married to the 4th Lord Brome and Vaux. Her marriage, however, was as uneasy as that of the Kindersleys, since while Oonagh and Dominic were having an affair, so too were Valerie and Philip. Eventually matters resolved themselves as follows. In 1936, Philip and Oonagh divorced. Valerie Brome then divorced her husband, and Dominic Oranmore and Browne then divorced his wife. He then married Oonagh, and Philip Kindersley married Valerie Brome, making this an instance of change partners, please. All of which, as you can imagine, provided heaps of pleasure and column inches for newspaper gossip writers on both sides of the Atlantic. Subsequently, here are Lord and Lady Oranmore and Browne in their peers' robes attending the coronation of George VI in London a year later. But a more important event around the same time was that Oonagh's father, Ernest Guinness, stopped renting Luggala and bought it outright, making a gift of the estate to his daughter, as she recorded in her visitor's book in June 1937. Luggala, the house that she loved more than any other, was now hers, and despite all sorts of future turmoils, it would be her home for many decades to come. So let's end today with a photograph of Oonagh and her two young children from the first marriage, Gay and Tessa Kindersley, on the entrance steps of Luggala. And in the next episode, I'll talk a little bit more about her life over the following decade, both in this house and at Castle Margaret. I look forward to seeing you then. Thank you so much for watching The Irish Aesthete. Goodbye.